You are listening to Creating Active Lives with me, Sarah Blytho, and my regular weekly guests, and we are all here to share the research, the science, and the strategies, as well as some of the fun, to help you to create a more active life. Hello and welcome to Creating Active Lives with me, Sarah Blytho, and my guest this week, Lisa Ann O'Donnell. Lisa is a therapeutic radiographer, and she's going to tell us exactly what that is shortly. She works at the Beatson, Western Scotland Cancer Care. She's also a lecturer in radiotherapy and oncology at Glasgow, Caledonian University. Those are quite mouthfuls of words to say, if anyone's wondering why I'm stumbling over them. She has a degree in radiation oncology science. She did the CanRehab, cancer and exercise course in 2021. And I was one of the lecturers on that, so that's kind of how we know each other. And she's currently doing her dissertation for a master's in advanced in practice at the University of Stirling. So tell us a little bit more then about what you actually do.
Well, you could basically do a whole programme on radiotherapy itself, but essentially a therapeutic radiographer is the person you'll meet when you go to one of the big oncology centres that does radiotherapy. There's different kind of parts to the job, but personally I am often the first person you'll meet because I work in the planning suite, so I work in the CT scanners. And I take the planning scans for patients. And those scans go through and we, use complex physics and maths to create these plans that are specific to each patient. And then when you come back for treatment, you'll see therapeutic radiographers every single day of your treatment, and they're the ones that will line you up and they will deliver the radiotherapy every single day. So that is a bit basic. We do some other jobs on top of that, but that's what.
Brilliant. Thank you for explaining that, actually, because I think sometimes it's easy to assume that people kind of know what these things are, but actually having a clear explanation like that's really, really useful. So moving on to sort of exercise and activity, you have had your own experiences with chronic illness and pain, and that kind of spurred you on to find out more about movement, about exercise, about activity. And the physical and mental benefits that you experienced kind of made you look at, maybe this is something that with my patients I can start to apply it. I can start to help them with moving more and managing some of the side effects of treatments. Most of us know side effects of most cancer treatments can be quite significant for people. And I know you, as I say, you did the CanRehab course and really looked at the evidence behind moving for people who live with and beyond cancer, whether they're in treatment or past treatment. And now you help to educate other staff and also students on the importance of activity, movement, whatever really, for people living with a cancer diagnosis. So what was it that made you do the training course in the first place? I mean, it's very specific to exercise and cancer. So what was it that led you to the CanRehab course in the first place?
Well, as I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia when I was 30, so about 10 years ago now, and I don't know if you know much about fibromyalgia, but I know there's been previous podcasts on it, and basically there isn't really a cure for these kind of things. Very much it's a management kind of option. I was lucky enough to go to the pain clinic up at Stophill Hospital, which is one of the hospitals just outside Glasgow, and they had just started that. A lot of that was around management of your pain and pacing. Now, I was the youngest in the room by quite a long way at that point. I think pretty much everyone else there was maybe in their 60s and 70s. So my idea of what I could do pacing was very different. I had a young child. She was 18 months old at the time. And I didn't have, dare I say, the luxury of being able to sit down when I needed to at times. So I thought about how I could improve that. And basically the thing I kept coming back to was, if I start doing more, maybe I can continue to do more. At that point in time, I was in quite a sedentary lifestyle as far as I could be. My job is very physical. There's no option there for sitting down. It's a very, very physical job. And I love my job, and I didn't want to be unable to do that. So to me, starting to move more and build up strength in my body, it felt a sensible thing to do. The other options at that time are really quite heavy-going pain-killing drugs. And I really didn't fancy what that might actually do to me. My child still woke up many times during the night at that point, so I couldn't take heavy painkillers because she needed me during the night. So the option then was, let's try and see if I can do some exercise. I had a wonderfully supportive GP, and I was lucky enough to have a physio service at my GP's and saw them. They were excellent, and they started me on Couch to 5K, completed it, and that was my first foray back in to exercise again. I then used a personal trainer and got back into that. And as I started to feel better, I could do more. I was a nicer person to be around. With chronic pain can come a lot of mood swings and difficulties there. And when I was doing exercise, I felt better. I behaved in a more pleasant manner to people. Also, not to mention, it was setting a better example for my child, which to me was very important. I've had some struggles with mental health over the years, and find that if I'm doing regular exercise, I actually do genuinely feel better, particularly if that exercise is outside. So when I put all that together, it seems so sensible that I could basically promote this to patients. However, how do you promote something to patients unless you're educated enough to know what's safe for them?
Like you say, it's often one of the barriers I know that people feel is that they don't get advice, and a lot of the times it's because medical professionals don't have the knowledge, and that's fair enough. I have spoken to someone else about this. It's not within your job description to know that, but it's really helpful if you have got somebody you can go to. I will just say, actually, anybody listening in who does experience chronic fatigue or fibromyalgia, obviously everybody's experience is different. For some people, even going for a short walk will not be possible, whereas others can do much more. So the experience is very, very individual. There's no, you can't sort of say, well, it's this grade or it's this level or it's this stage. Everybody is affected differently. So, don't think, oh, well, I've got fibromyalgia and I can't exercise. That's fine. It might just be that you do some gentle mobility while you're sitting down. Sometimes it is just doing something that helps, even if it is just rolling your shoulders a few times. But I would always say get advice. So, what made you realise, or when did you realise the impact that moving more would have on people living with and beyond cancer?
Well, as part of our job description, you must undertake regular research, basically. You need to keep up to date with this kind of information. And we're encouraged within my work, within the Beatson, to have a sort of area of speciality, if you know what I mean. So obviously I do sort of down the path of the CT scanning. That is a speciality in itself. However, we all have developed our own interests. I mean, I've been qualified nearly 20 years. So we do have our areas of interest. Some people choose to focus on like a particular cancer site, like breast or prostate or whatever. However, to me, I'm just always interested in patients' stories. I love to hear patients' stories, hear how they're getting on in the rest of their lives. And also, at the end of the day, I mean, our patients, they are surviving longer and longer. And therefore, it's important that not only are you surviving, but are you living well? And to me, that's like a huge drive within my job. It's not just a case of getting them through their radiotherapy. It's how are you managing? How are you going to manage when you go home today? And how can we make you have a better life for however long anyone's life is? to get the most out of that for them. And particularly, I'm a big advocate of just being outside. And that that goes hand in hand with any movement. Like you say, not everyone can be exercising, but most people can get outside for a bit. And as you're saying, a little bit of shoulder movement, a bit of armchair in your armchair, but just be outside. So part of me just thought,
and it is so important. We know, I mean, there are so many benefits. Anyone who listens in regularly will know that there's been quite a few episodes about being outside, because it's just so beneficial. And there's more and more evidence about the physiological reactions in our bodies. It's not just about that kind of mental health boost. There is actually a physical reaction to being outside, particularly if you're around a very natural environment. But it's sometimes hard, isn't it? Because we know that a lot of the treatments that people have during cancer treatment can have quite an impact on energy levels. Radiotherapy, chemotherapy, even surgery have, one of the biggest side effects is fatigue. And it is hard sometimes, isn't it, when people are very, very fatigued and you're saying, what you need to do is go out and move more and things. And they're like, but I can barely move as it is. And you're asking me to move. I've got hardly enough energy just to sit down. How is moving going to help me? And I think that's a big barrier for people, isn't it? Is the lack of awareness that actually the right amount of movement can be very energizing as opposed to fatiguing.
I would say for our patients in particular, a lot of that is also bound up in fear that they're going to do more damage, fear that they're going to tire themselves out excessively. So to be that person in that Mediterranean blue tunic that turns and says, do you know it's okay for you to do that? Do you know it's okay for you to take the dog a walk? Keep up. What do you do? And that's how I start all my conversations with the patients, as I say. So, when I'm talking to them as I'm getting them off the bed, I'll say to them, so what do you do? How active is your life? And from there, we can judge that conversation and see how that goes. Yes, okay, as you said, for everyone, even if they are particularly fatigued, there is lots and lots of research to show that a lot of fatigue can be lessened during your cancer treatments with some mild exercise. So to be able to lead in with that and say, have you seen any research on this? And you judge it by patient basis, obviously. But the first question I'll maybe say is, what do you do when you get home? And some might say, oh, I've got a dog. So of course that leads you naturally into a conversation about walking your dog and what route do you do? And is there any hills on that route? And having a conversation, just building on what they can do. And I think that's where the CanRehab course really brought in conversation openers for that kind of experience, which I really enjoyed. But then it also gave me the specialist knowledge of, prescribing more weight-bearing techniques, things that we can encourage them to do from there. So, but yes, you're absolutely patient by patient and seeing where and not everyone's open to that discussion, and that's okay too. That's okay. We don't, you can tell from the word go.
And I always say this is, if people are not open to it at this moment, don't push them, because at the end of the day, they have a choice, and their choice right now is no, I'm not interested. But even the fact that you've mentioned it and then backed off, it's planted a seed somewhere. And the fact that you haven't pushed it, you haven't pressurised them, you haven't made them feel guilty, means that if they do want to find out more, they'll come back to you because you respected their decision to not find out more. So when they are ready, they can come back and say, well, actually, my mate down the road said that he was doing a little bit of exercise and he actually felt better for it. So I want to find out more now. And I think it's so important that you give people the choice of finding out more now or not. And I think as well, don't you? You're saying you ask people what they do, and that again is another important opener, because most people do some activity, but because they think of exercise as an hour in a gym, getting hot, getting sweaty, not being able to move the next day. People really think about exercise as this just massively hard work. They forget, or they don't know, that actually walking the dog, washing the car, doing a bit of housework counts as activity. And that's a good place to start. If you're not up for exercise, just start by moving a little bit more. And that must be a really good conversation to have with people. And they're like, oh, yeah, okay, that I can do.
Yeah, absolutely. I tend to avoid using the word exercise at first, certainly. I'll use movement or activity. I'll go down those lines, and then we'll discuss what they do and how we can improve that and maintain that kind of, or just even maintain what they're doing is absolutely fine if they're not feeling up to it. Getting to encourage them, if they need to take a day off, then they take a day off. They don't have to do something every single day if they're having a difficult day. We just generally start with that. So as we have those conversations, I encourage, if we're working with students, I encourage them to also have those conversations. They don't need to go into any more detail than that. And if the patient tends to want to talk about it more, then they can refer them on to somebody who knows more. So, but it's just getting that first conversation starter going. So I do enjoy that.
But as I say, it's so important that people realise, A, that they don't have to start with an hour in the gym 5 times a week, but also that anything they do is going to be beneficial. And because sometimes, again, I think people think, well, if I can't do that hour in the gym, or I can't go to an hour-long class, or I can't do an hour of exercise, there's no point. But if you're doing very little, then even doing an extra 5 minutes or 10 minutes is going to be beneficial. And for a lot of people, building that confidence, like you say, people are worried about they're going to injure themselves, they're going to hurt themselves. I've had people say they're worried that if they exercise, the cancer will spread. It will make it easier for the cancer to spread, which is just not the case. That's not how it works. But once people become more confident that they can move a bit more, then they'll start to move a bit more. Most people can do more than they realise. But there's no point in pushing people too soon, is there, or too fast, because it just scares them. But I think once you build that confidence that actually I can do this, it's okay, I do feel a bit better, then it starts to really have an impact, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's quite enjoyable to see that, like that penny drop on them and say, oh yeah, okay, I can do this, I can manage that. It's a nice, easy thing that you can do to improve patients' lives. And it doesn't cost any money to say that to anyone, which is so important in the NHS. So it costs no more money just to say, you can do this. And regardless of their diagnosis, I mean, some people, that's not even the thing that's the most difficult and the thing that's holding them back most in their lives. Some people have quite significant comorbidities, so obviously we're working with that as well. But a lot of times, gentle exercise helps other conditions that they might have. So, it's quite a useful thing to be doing anyway. But you're right. It's giving them the confidence to go ahead and do something a bit more. So
the press. The media tend to focus on the stories of people who maybe have quite a significant diagnosis and have carried on running marathons, running half marathons, doing quite extreme activity. Do you think sometimes that people think that's what they're going to be asked to do because that's what they've seen in the media? Is, my goodness, this person had cancer and they ran the length of Britain and I can barely walk the length of my living room. Do you think that's a bit off-putting as well?
I think that can be I think the media is can be guilty of a lot of things, and sometimes those stories are wonderfully inspiring, but that is a tiny percentage of the patients that you'll see. And it is. I myself have trained and ran a marathon, and it was no picnic. And I can't imagine doing that when obviously you've got other things going on in your life like that. So yes, I can see how sometimes it is wonderfully inspiring and it might encourage the odd patient to get out there and do something. However, what we're really aiming for is for you to just feel a little bit better. And if that is just being out and managing a walk around the block and coming in the next day and saying to me, I made it all the way around the block this time without stopping, then I'll be just as delighted for you if you've, I don't know, gone to the top of Kilimanjaro. So it's just as much for some people to have managed that, or, you know, to keep that independence in their lives. It's so important that they manage that, and then we can bring in the weight bearing so that they can manage all their normal daily activities.
And for most people, that's what they want, isn't it? Is to be able to live an independent life, to be able to do the things that they've always been able to do and carry on doing them. And it's I think we need more stories of people who've gone from being sat down most of the day to just going out for a 20-minute walk. You know, there are a lot of people who have increased their activity a small amount, but to them, it's a big change. It's a big difference in their lives. But the big thing is it needs to be sustainable. And that's where, anyone who listens to me, anyone who's been on a course with me will know one of my big things is start where your client is, start where people are, start where you are. If you can do 5 minutes, do 5 minutes. When you're ready, increase it to 6 minutes, to 7 minutes. Don't think you've got to start with an hour. All the guidelines that are out there. I'm going to do a podcast one of these days on interpreting the guidelines, because there's so many different ones. They could be useful for everybody. But the guidelines out there are what you're aiming for, not where you're starting from. And I think people don't understand that. Is, you know, guidelines are out there as a guide. It's kind of like, this is where we'd like you to be. But wherever you are now, if you do nothing, then do a minute. Once you can do a minute, do 90 seconds. You know, whatever you do is going to be a bonus. And I think that's something that people, it's almost a relief when they realise that all you're asking them to do is a little bit more, isn't it? Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, and just more incorporating it into their daily life. You were saying about washing the car. A lot of patients and a lot of people, I would say, in general, need to do something that's useful. They don't see their exercise as being useful, and it's taken away from their chores. If you can tell them that their chores count, then, you know, that's great. Like gardening, or, you know, washing the car, or whatever it is, washing the windows, that all counts, and that's all part of their movement. So sometimes they don't even realise how active they actually are, and it spurs them on to just be a little bit more confident. It might be something like
they've been doing the ironing sitting down because of their energy levels, and now they can do the ironing standing up, or they can actually stand up for long enough to cook a meal, whereas before they'd have to take regular breaks. We underestimate sometimes some of these everyday activities and how important they are to people. And those, to me, are the things that really motivate people to keep going. Not, I've won this medal or I've finished this race. And we'll come on to talking about 5K Your Way in a moment, because it is important. But for a lot of people initially, it's actually, I've got enough energy to have a bath on my own and get out of the bath on my own now. Whereas before I couldn't, because I don't want people helping me. Or I've got enough energy to do my own laundry, to get dressed on my own. Simple things like that quite often are what motivates people to think, right, okay, if doing this small amount of activities made this difference to me, maybe if I do a bit more, what can I gain from that, isn't it? And that's where the confidence comes in, is, you know, look, just by doing a bit more, I can do so much more in my everyday life. So maybe if I do a little bit more than I'm doing now, what can I achieve? And people start looking for opportunities, don't they? And this is where I think the 5K Your Way comes in. And it is something that's it's been going for a little while, hasn't it? So tell us a little bit about it and how you got involved.
So it's run mostly by the charity Move. And it's all about encouraging those with a cancer diagnosis, whether a long time in the past or very recent, whether in active treatment or whether in remission, whatever, they and their family or their friends or other healthcare professionals who work within oncology to join up with a park run. So, I mean, as I'm sure most people know, parkrun has been around for quite a while now, and it's a very welcoming, warm environment. And it always has stressed that you don't need to run parkrun. You can walk it, you can volunteer. So obviously, when you match that up with 5K Your Way, and the emphasis being on your way, means that you can walk, you can do a small amount of it. You don't need to complete the whole thing. But it's a timed route. so you can actually see your times improve if that was something that motivated you. So, everyone's motivated by different things. You can also just come and actually volunteer at it. So what we do is the last Saturday of the month, we will be appearing at Elder Park in Govan in Glasgow. And we will come in our lovely blue hoodies and we'll be there. And we can either walk with people, we can run with people, we can work on whatever form of exercise you want to do round this parkrun. So apart from the fact that the parkrun family itself is very, very welcoming, you've got extra people there. Now that's made up at the moment. We have 7 ambassadors, and they are made up of myself, which is a therapeutic radiographer. We have a couple of clinical oncologists from the Beatson itself. We've got a couple of people who had a cancer diagnosis as well. So we've got a lovely variation. We've also got a couple of specialist nurses. So we've got a lovely variation of, I want to say the word experts there to support you with that. And really, I think the aim is that if you can come once a month and be around that support, maybe that might encourage you to come or do other forms of movement in the meantime as well. So the reason I got involved was it was Claire, who's a very, very lovely lady who had a cancer diagnosis a number of years ago. And she had heard about this and was really keen to set up one in Scotland, because this was the first one in Scotland, on Saturday, just at the end of October. And she was talking to one of the oncologists that she knew from school, from the school run. And she said, "Oh, I know a radiographer who's done the CanRehab course, and I bet she'd want to get involved in this." And here I was, involved in it, as usual. So it's been absolutely fantastic and very inspiring. And when we've only managed one so far, but at the end of November, we'll be doing our second. But we actually did have some active patients come along and achieve some personal goal.
It sounds amazing. And I think as well, from the patient's point of view, the fact that you've got clinical professionals there must be very reassuring for them, because they're like, well, if they're there and they're telling me to come along, then it's going to be safe, it's going to be okay. But presumably you could even just go along 1 month and do 1K, and then the next month do 1K. So your 5K might take you 5 months to do, but it's still your way. Or it might be that you say, well, actually, over this month, this is the culmination of my 5K. So, you don't have, like you say, you don't have to do it all at once. And, for a lot of people, 5K sounds like a lot. But if you can start just by volunteering, then it's getting you out, it's getting you outside, it's getting you chatting to people. And even that, you're going to be doing some sort of activity. And that's the important thing. And this is where I think, we need more awareness of things like this. And the fact that you're doing the first one in Scotland, and I know that we've got somebody else who's looking at starting one up in Edinburgh area. So if I'll get the details on that one as well, because the more support there is for this and the more collaboration, it means that, you're sharing experiences and knowledge and what works and what didn't work and ideas. And again, that's important as well, isn't it? And people like to feel part of something as well. And I think this is where these sorts of initiatives, it's not just going off on your own for a walk. It's being with other people. It's being part of it. And I'm sure, I've been in the industry for so long, and I'd have people who would come along to, exercise referral sessions or specialist sessions, and they would come along to tell me they couldn't come along. So they would turn up to say, I can't exercise today. I'm just not well enough to exercise today. But being there was still a really important part of it. And I think that's something that you'll probably experience, is people will come along and say, look, actually, it's not going to happen for me today, but I'll hold the coats. Yeah. And that's what you want, isn't it?
Which is perfectly acceptable. It's also, I'm hoping that it'll provide some support for the family and friends, because we have ones obviously who may have been very, very active in the past and at the moment aren't able to be so, but perhaps that's part of their relationship. So what happens is if you can come to a park run, then your partner can run the park run and we will walk with you round it, or we'll walk part of it with you. And it means that the partner doesn't feel this guilt or worry because they know that they're getting looked after while they're able to enjoy it as well and still be doing something together, which is so important. And the other thing I've got to say about it is it's free. And so few things are free that, you know, that the benefits of that. And some of the charities do some amazing work with walks and runs and, you know, but a lot of these are sponsored. So you might feel you're having to ask people for money for your sponsorship, whereas this is literally just for you. You come and you spend your time doing your 5K. And as I joked with some of them, they were talking about, oh, I used to run much further than 5K. And I'm saying, but if somebody told you the shop was 3 miles away, you'd be taking the car. I mean, it's still a fair way. And, you know, people can be very hard on themselves. So to encourage them to do that as well and to think about it as a wonderful achievement and not to downplay it at all.
And that's the important thing, I think, you know, being able to go at your own pace. Even you can arrive as a family, as friends or a group, you can do it at your own pace and then you leave as a group, but you're all in it together, and that's what's so important.
Yeah.
So have you got any kind of little success stories with patients who weren't particularly active and have, through sharing your knowledge, through sharing advice and support, have become active?
Well, I would say that I think most of the kind of success part of it is the fact that when they come into the department, they're worried about various things and what's happening to them. And to provide any sort of support to anybody, I try and, you know, make sure it's across the board in whatever way to encourage them to live a more active life, or to keep up their active life, I think is the main aim. We have had patients in the past who had stopped going to the gym because they were worried about the damage it would cause. And I was able to have conversations to say, no, this is absolutely fine. You can keep doing this if that's something you've been doing. The only thing you might want to avoid is whatever. Quite often we don't encourage our radiotherapy patients to swim in a pool while they're having radiotherapy. So apart from that, you know, they can do whatever they need to do. So it's more of a generalist thing than anyone else. But I have had patients, as they leave, thank me for giving them the confidence to keep up with their life and to be able to go back out to the waiting room and say to their partner, no, I am allowed to do this. I don't have to give up that big part of my life. Because for a lot of people, I mean, we talk about people who don't have a lot of movement in their lives. But there are also people who that is a big part of their personality. So to allow them the confidence to go back out and say, no, I can go to the gym. I'm able to do this. In fact, they've just told me I should be doing it. That's always quite a good feeling when you do that. And also just like some of our older patients, the gentlemen who maybe go to the bowling is quite often a popular choice of activity, and to be able to say, oh no, that's a great activity, you should definitely be keeping that up, that's excellent. Just make sure that, you know, you're keeping up those lunges, that's a perfect thing to be doing, and the encouragement of all that kind of thing. I think at the heart of things, I mean, I am a physicist, so we go with the rule, a body in motion stays in motion. So that's kind of what I say to patients as part of what we're doing with them. And I think it's just overall, I love seeing how I can educate other members of staff and students into just having these very light, very quick conversations that open a door and just promote a little bit more chat around activity and what we can do to improve these patients' lives.
And that's what we want. You know, it's like your body in motion stays in motion. Use it or lose it is the other one. It's, you know, and for a lot of people, the aim is just to keep doing what they're doing. It's not necessarily to do more, but it's just to have the energy, just to have the strength, the endurance to keep doing what they're doing, whatever level that's at. And I think for a lot of it, it's giving people the permission to choose as well, to say, actually, right now, I don't want to do it because I'm just not in the right place. But if you said that's fine, then they're more likely to come back to you when they are ready. And usually the seed's planted, isn't it? And they'll be thinking, well, actually, I would like to be able to, I have noticed I can't open a jar, or I can't stretch, or I can't walk as fast. Maybe I do need to find out a bit more about this. Maybe I do need to go back to it. And we know from all the research that for the vast majority of people, exercise, activity, movement is safe during and after cancer treatments. And it's something that we want to get people more active, not because we've got a target of saying we need this many people active, but because we know it's going to help them with their recovery. We can't say that recovery will be quicker or better, but it just helps you cope with it. It helps you cope with any side effects. And I think it's a sense as well of control, of normalness. I don't think that's a word, but yeah, it's kind of like this is in what is an abnormal time in my life. This is something normal that I can keep doing. And I think for a lot of people that's important, even if it's a 5-minute walk or something. It's just like, this is something I've always done. I want to keep doing it. And I think that is an important kind of, not control, but it's an important element of, I'm still me, of identity, isn't it? Particularly for people who've always been active.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the research is out there to show how beneficial exercise is for everybody, but particularly relating. But if they're not ready, or able to delve into that amount of research, which, a lot of people aren't, then that's our job, is to, demonstrate that for them and say, well, actually, this is where you can find that research, but I can also tell you a bit about it. So, yeah, we can't all, as you said right at the start, we can't all be experts on it. But if we can educate more and more people to just open up the question and have a conversation about it, and then exactly what 5K Your Way is hoping to achieve is, if we promote that, then hopefully more people will join us. And we'll be able to, get everybody moving.
And by my reckoning, I think those of you listening in on the day of release, I think this is going out on the 23rd of November. 24th of November is Cancer Support Scotland Day. So a really important day for finding out more about support that's available in Scotland. And I think your next run will actually be on the 25th of November. So I will make sure all the details are there. So I'll get the details from Lisa Ann and make sure that if you are in the west of Scotland, the west of Glasgow area, that you know where you can go and get advice. And as I find out more places that are doing this, I'll make sure that the details are available, because I think it's something that a lot of people will feel supported, reassured, and just part of it, which is really important. So I think that's something that we really need to kind of spread the message that there's something out there for everybody, whatever level you are. There's an activity that's suitable, even if it is just a 10-minute video at home or a few shoulder rolls, if that's all you feel like doing. That's fine. Just a little bit more than you were doing yesterday. And that's all we really want, isn't it? So any final messages out there to people who maybe are going through treatment or about to go through treatment or have just completed?
Basically, I would say that speak to anyone that you want to within the department that you're at, and somebody will be able to give you some advice. And generally what I say to patients, if I don't have the answer, I'll find someone who does have the answer and we can have a little chat. Basically, move as much as you can within your own limitations.
Brilliant. Lisa Ann, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been really, really useful, and I hope that people find it. There's a lot of information in here, but also a lot of support. So get out there and find the support, because it's there. It's there for you. You've been listening to me, Sarah Belytho, on Creating Active Lives, and my guest this week, Lisa Ann O'Donnell. Thank you all for listening, and we will see you all very soon. Thank you for listening to Creating Active Lives with me, Sarah Belytho, and my guests. Join me each week for more on how to create and sustain
everyday activity, and follow me online at Fitness Career Mentor or Fabulous if you're interested in career development and more on creating active lifestyles.